Hi everybody, I am Miss Nicole at Bloomfield Public Library, and this is our first Science Bytes of the year 2024. I'm very excited to be bringing it back, and I have the perfect early winter project for us. We are going to be making some homemade bird feeders. And you might be asking yourself, why are we doing this at this time of year? And there's a very good reason for this. And one of the main reasons that this is the perfect time of year to do this is that bears are hibernating. So a lot of problems that people have with homemade bird feeders or regular bird feeders is that they attract bears because it's an easy food source. And now that bears are sleeping, we can actually put these out there, and hopefully we'll get a lot of birds who will make use of them, and actually some squirrels, as I'll talk to you about a little bit later. But I have one project I'm going to show you from start to finish, and then I'll show you some examples of some other versions of homemade bird feeders that you can do at home. Now, the first version of a bird feeder that we're going to do, and this is the one that I'm going to take you from start to finish, is a pine cone bird feeder. And a lot of us have pine cones in our yards, or if we go on walks in the woods, even at this time of year, we can find a lot of pine cones on the ground. I actually collected a whole bunch of pine cones. So if you don't have any in your yard, don't worry. You can pop into the library and we will make sure you go home with some pine cones and some bird seed, because that's another thing we need. I went ahead and I bought a big giant bag of bird seed for the Northeast, which I thought pretty much covered us. So I tested it out in my yard, and the birds seemed to like it. So I think I've got us covered with bird seed too. So I have pine cones I can give everybody and bird seed. And then the only other really ingredient that we need is peanut butter. Now, I bought myself the biggest bottle of peanut butter I've ever seen. It's the biggest container I've ever seen. You do not need this much peanut butter. If you have regular peanut butter hanging around the house, that works great. You will need a way to apply it to the pine cone. I'm just going to use a rubber spatula, but you could use a spoon or a butter knife or whatever is handy at home that makes it easier for you to spread peanut butter. And then I do also recommend that you have 2 plates. I'm using plastic plates because they're nice and sturdy, but any kind of plates work well. You can use your regular dinner plates. The reason I have 2 plates is that we are going to need 1 plate where we are gooping up our pine cone with peanut butter, and in the second plate, I'm going to pour the bird seed, and we're going to roll the pine cone and the peanut butter in that bird seed. Now, we obviously need a way to hang our pine cone in a tree. You don't have to hang it in a very high branch. You don't need a ladder to climb to make sure it's really tall. It just needs to be dangling from a reachable branch in a tree. It is going to be a lot easier to attach some sort of string to this pine cone before we goop it up with peanut butter. So I actually have some kite string here, which I will probably use, but I do also have some twine, and this is a lot thicker. This is, it might be hemp twine. I'm not sure what kind of twine it is, but so I do have this thicker, sturdier rope. I will say that the squirrels fairly quickly were able to chew through this kite string of mine, but it was easier to hang. So I think I'm still going to stick with the kite string for today, but you may find, if you have frisky squirrels like I did, that you may want to try something thicker and sturdier that's harder for them to chew through. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So first, I'm going to actually pull a fairly long length of string here, because you want to give yourself, you can always cut off extra, but you want to give yourself enough to wrap a few times around the pine cone and tie some knots, but also do the same on some sort of tree branch. So depending on what tree branch you think you might use, that could factor in. I have some small trees in front of my house that don't have very wide branches, so I don't need to worry too much about that. But I have a nice big long length of rope here that I'm going to use. And you'll see at one end of your pine cone, we have a stem. I think that's the easiest end to hang it from. But instead of just tying it around the stem, because that's going to be very easy to slip off, I actually loop the string through the first part of the pine cone here. So I'll give you a close-up look at what I'm doing. So I'm going to tuck it under those first little, I don't know what you call them, little petals of pine cone is what I'm going to call them. And I'm going to wrap it around a couple of times, just like that. And I'm going to twist it once more. Go back around the other way. One more time. And now I'm just going to tie a normal sort of knot. I will loop it around the stem a couple times too. But here I'm just going to tie a normal knot. There we go. So just once. And I'm going to do it one more time. Twice. And one more knot. Why not? And there we go. So now my pine cone is ready to hang from a tree. But now we have to get it all gooped up with all the good stuff that the birds want to be eating. You can really use any seed or nut butter. Peanut butter is just my go-to for all kinds of butters. But if you had, like almond butter or some other alternative, seed or nut butter at home that you use as a family, that works perfectly fine too. The birds aren't picky. So here again is my pine cone with my string. Now I'm going to get the string a little out of the way, just off to the side of the plate. And here's my giant jug of peanut butter. And I'm going to take off my watch too, because that's going to get in the way, and maybe one of my bracelets. But here is my rubber spatula, and all I'm going to do is fill up all these open areas with peanut butter. Now, I usually like to spread the peanut butter from this angle down, because you see how the little petals are sticking up like this? Think of them almost like little cups that are open and waiting for things to be poured into them. So I figured by spreading it this way, it sort of gets right into those little cups waiting for peanut butter. So really, all you need to do on this step is to scoop out blobs of peanut butter and to spread it into your pine cone, just like this. And you're just gonna keep doing that until it looks like things are filled up. I'm gonna scoop again, nice big scoops. And this is the part that gets kind of messy because you're getting lots of goop all over the place. Nut butter goop everywhere. So let me just keep on going. You want to go as far up near where you tied the string as possible. You want to really try and cover up that pine cone. Now you can see there is a lot of peanut butter there. So this is the phase where I am now. I'm going to push that plate out of the way and bring my plate of seed. Now there's probably about 3/4 of a cup to a cup of seed here, which is more than enough. You're going to find you have extra. It will not all stick to the pine cone. But I'm going to just literally plunk it right in there and use my hands and sprinkle some on top. I'm going to just sort of roll it around like you're coating it and just keep smooshing. This is the part that gets really messy because now you're really getting in there. Doesn't matter how careful you're trying to be, now you're really getting up close and personal with that peanut butter. I'm going to keep doing this. Try and keep your string out of the way because remember, you're going to need to tie that to the tree. So if you see that it's getting in the way, just lift it up out of the way and move it. And keep patting it in there because you want to press it into that peanut butter so it's in there nice and good. Trying to cover up all those peanut butter bits. And I'm just about done. And voila, there is your outside bird feeder, all natural. The birds will start pecking at it. I'm showing you a video off to the side here where I had my first bird visitor, which was lovely. It was a cardinal, bright red, beautiful. He was picking at the tiny seeds on the side of my feeder. And then very shortly thereafter, the squirrels found it. And I will say this, squirrels need to get prepared for the winter just as much as anyone else, but my squirrels were in a frenzy. So as soon as the squirrels discovered it, there was no getting any birds near my bird feeder. So the squirrels would pick it up in both hands. I have a video here I'm showing you too of the squirrel pick it up in both hands and trying to yank it out of the tree. And eventually they got it out of the tree. So you may see you get a lot of squirrels eating from your bird feeders, and that's okay too. It's all nature, right? Now, here's an example of another very simple homemade bird feeder to make. This used to be a pink grapefruit. All I did was scoop out all the insides. If any of you have ever made a jack-o'-lantern before where you scooped out all the insides of the pumpkin, That's a lot like what this experience was. So you really get in there, you sort of pull out, all the little rinds and little bits that are in there. So you have a nice sort of empty cup. And then you just poke a hole. You can do 3 or 4 holes. I did 3. So I just poked 3 holes, sort of equal distance from each other around the outside of the rind for my grapefruit. And now this is just a cup that you put seed in. So here I've got some seed. I'm going to move my little strings out of the way. I've got some more of my seed, and I'm just going to literally pour that in. And now it is literally a cup of seed for the birds. And just like before with our pine cone, you're just going to tie this to a tree. I did, for mine, I tied the string to each of the holes, just knotted it like you would with a regular knot. But then I also made a knot a little ways up just to keep the strings together. You might see some planters, some hanging planterns that are like this, but I did that just to keep things steady. So I did do an extra little knot this far up just to make it steady, but that just gets hung on a branch just like we were going to do with the pine cone. And then the final one I wanted to show you can see in the background here. This is probably the trickiest because it takes the most effort, but it's also not very complicated. So this, I had an old milk carton here of mine, and I used a sharp pair of scissors, and you want to cut yourself a window just on 2 sides of the milk carton. You'll see that I've got 2 sides that I did not cut, and here I have the 2 sides that I did cut. You can see right through. But you're going to cut that open just on 3 sides and then fold down the flap. So you can see if I push this up, it originally was this tall. I cut some of the excess off, but it gives you a little ledge here. So now all I need to do is put the seed in the bottom, and now the birds have, it's almost like a mini birdhouse. But this is another way of having a feeder, and you just punch a hole right through the top, right at the part where it pinches together on your milk carton. So you punch a nice big hole because you're going to have to get some string through there. For this one, I used my twine because I thought it might make sense to use the thicker string. But this then would get hung in a tree. Now, let me give you just a few final parting thoughts here. One thing that the Audubon Society does recommend is that you do not hang all of your feeders in the same spot in the same tree. If you've decided to do a bunch of these little projects or more than one pine cone, make sure you spread them out throughout your yard. And the reason for this is that it helps prevent disease from spreading among bird populations. So if you have a lot of different kinds of birds all trying to come to the same feeding area, there's more of a chance that they can pass diseases amongst each other. So if you spread them throughout your yard in different spots, then it helps keep some of those bird populations separate. It spreads out the populations. Think of it like what we did when the COVID pandemic was at its height, and we all had to make sure we sat a certain distance from other people and gave everybody enough space around themselves just to make sure that we weren't spreading the COVID virus. It's the same sort of principle. So you want to just make sure that the birds have enough space between the feeders so there's less chances of them being able to pass yucky things amongst each other. But that's basically it. So as a reminder, my one other final thought is just to remind you, I do have some supplies if you need them. So you can visit us at our atrium location, which is 1300 Hall Boulevard. So pop over, see our new temporary library space, and I can give you 1 or 2 pine cones. I can give you, a good cup or so of bird seed. The nut butter will have to be on you, but I can give you the seed and some pine cones, probably more than one. I have a lot of pine cones. So I can certainly give you stuff to do more than one project. So hopefully I'll see you at the atrium. Hopefully you will try out this project. It's a fun way to watch the wildlife in your yard too. It only took about, I want to say, an afternoon or so, maybe one day for the birds and the squirrels to find my first feeder. And now that they know what to look for, I think they're going to find it very quickly when I put these other ones out in the yard. So that's it for today. I will have another Science Bites coming your way next month. So look for that video. And as always, feel free to contact me at Bloomfield Public Library, our atrium location. And I'm happy to answer any questions or talk to you about any projects. I love talking to people about science. So until then, bye everybody.